Welcome to another In the Labs with me, David. A few of you have been asking for Rotary projects for Project of the Month. So this month we're going to make this single pedestal barley twist table. It's a little occasional table that you can use for all sorts of different things. The principles are the same though. You can make a newel post for your stairway or some spindles. It's the same approach. We're going to show you how we made this all in VCarve, adding some of the decorations that we have on top and bottom, and of course the top and the base of the table. So let's go and see how we made this in the software.
Okay, let's get started with VCarve Pro. We're going to create a new file. We're going to use the stock that I've got, which is 23 inches long, 2.5 thick. It's a rotary item from the center and along the x-axis. Okay, we'll say OK to that. And now we're going to use the gadget tool now to wrap some vectors around this shape. I'd like it to wrap 3 times. So we use the gadget tool, wrapping, and the spiral layout. This will work out for us how long we need the vectors to go around this shape. Well, I want 2 3/4 inches gap between the wraps. I want 2 inches either side, so for the chuck and for the tailstock, and 3 revolutions. And it's already worked that out for me. And now it's laid out exactly 2 inches in from the each end, and it's going to give me the total length of the wraps that I need for this to continually wrap for the barley twist that we're looking for. Okay, I'm going to use the measure tool now and a span. I need to find out how long this is. On the spans it tells me it's 33, but I also need to know the angle of this because we're going to use some components in a moment. So I'm going to measure this first of all. That also gives me the length, as you can see here. Make a note of those, and also the angle, which is really quite important too, so minus 55.5. Okay, just before we finish, I need to measure between the barley twists too, so to make sure that they're going to merge together. Make a note of this, 1.5114. Next we're going to use some clip art. So we'll just close this down, go to the clip art section, and we're going to get some of the 3D tabs and start using those in a different way. I'm going to use this first one here, and it's already telling me it's going to alter the surface. Is that okay? And yes, it is. So I'm going to tap between the two views now. I'll open up the toolpath section as well, pin that open, and now I'm going to toggle the stock view on as well. So I want to see where the stock, so the green lines here is the actual material that I'm going to use, and we can see that's on the surface of this model. I'm now going to use the set button here just to open up the model itself, and you'll see now it's moved it so it's within the stock material, so when I machine this it will be correct for the surface. So just going to toggle to unwrap, and now double click on the 2D view so I can start planning out the area that I need. We're going to scale this item now as well, so I need to resize it. So I'm going to click on the item itself, look for the scale, transform options here, and I need to just click on the item, and we're going to go into the set size, and here these are where I'm going to add the measurements in that we took earlier. So it was 33.569 inches long, and I'm also going to add in the width here, which was 1.5114, I think it was 14, and I'll just make that a little bit wider, I think, just to make sure that they're going to merge together when they sit closely to each other. So 1.52, something like this, and apply that. So now the length is correct, and I'm just going to have a quick look, toggle the item here, and you'll see this now, and just wrap it. So this is the 3D view, and that's wrapped. Now that's that item wrapped across the surface. Use the slider inside the material setup now. You can see it's not making much of a difference here. So I'm just going to close this down, and I'm going to move this model to its own level. So here I'm going to insert a new level, and I'm going to now move the item that we've just made into this level, and I'm going to rename that level, and I'm going to call this Barley Twist tab. So this is where I'm going to contain all the items for the barley twist. So there's going to be 3 altogether. This is my first item. And I'm going to scale this now as well. So if I go into, just tab that open, you can see it's quite tall. I want to make it a little bit thinner than that. So I'm going to say here I want to make it say half of that, so 0.6 of an inch. And you can see that now it's reduced the height of this. I'll re-wrap it, re-tab it so it's wrapped. And now I'm going to, you can see I have more control now over this area, and I'm just making the core bigger and sitting that model on top of that core. Just to explain that a little bit further, if I tab on or toggle on the material block, which is the green item here, you can see where that's going to machine in that surface. Okay, I'm going to close that down now, and I'm ready to start rotating this item. So I want it to wrap around this model. So I'm going to use now the rotate tool, the rotate option, and I want to rotate that at 55 minus 55.5. These are the measurements that I took earlier. And now you can see it just wraps automatically around that surface. And now I'm going to use the slider inside the material setup to change the core diameter. So we can slide this down and the model will sit on top of that smaller core, or to the maximum measurements that we set out in the original, when we set out our original material that we have for machining. Okay, I'm going to go to the model now and change this to a wrapping mode. So if we go to model, select the level and change to wrapping, you'll see how that wraps around that surface now. If we have a look in the 2D view, you can see it's taken the whole length of that and wrapped it around the core that we specified. And we can change both items at the same time here as well, so we can go in to change the actual model itself that's sitting on top of the core and the core size. So if I click on the model here, I want to change that now to say 0.7 or something. You see the material, the actual item's got thicker and the core's got a little bit smaller, and it's working within the constraints of the stock material that we first set. These items here I've already stored inside the spiral vector, so if you don't want to use the gadget tool, they're already there for you to use anyway. And now we're going to ungroup those, and I want to use them singularly because I want to position the 3D models on top of those vectors. So we can see the three items here. I'm going to use this one first of all and select the vector as well, and then we're going to use the align tools, which are in here, and I want to align to the first one, and it will align it directly onto that surface. And again, I'm going to copy and paste, and then paste that in, so it's on top of one another at the moment. And now I'm going to select the vector and align that one too. And the same for the third one. You can use the Control and Alt and drag, and that will copy an item and in one direction, the direction that you select. But also you can just use that as, if I select the vector and the item, I can also use the align tool. So now you can see we have our Barley twist. They're all merging together nicely on its own layer and wrapping around the core. Should you wish to alter all three together, you can still do that. So if you go to the modelling section, you can select all three items together. So 1, 2 and 3, and if you double click on those, you can then bring up the shape height dialog box, and also you can use the slider inside the material setup to change the core size. Okay, we'll move on to the next section, which is to put two end stock pieces now, one for the chuck and one for the tailstock, to make sure that we can machine within a particular area. I'm going to use a rectangular tab this time in the tab section. I'm going to bring that into the center, and now I want to resize this. I'm going to put it directly inside the Barley twist, but I want to make its own level, so I'm going to insert a new level here, and I'm going to call that the end tabs. And inside here I'm going to move that now into the end tab. It's on its own layer. So inside here now I can use this to merge with the other shapes that we've wrapped around the core. I'm going to just change the size of this now, so I'm going to select it and I'm going to the drawing tools, and I want to transform this object. Before we do that, we need to make sure that we've got this measurement here. We need to make the ends about 2.5 inches wide, but the height is 8.0111. So we select it into the transform area. 2.5 inches in here is the width that I want for each end, and I want the height to be 8.0111. And notice I've unlinked these as well, so they're not linked in the X and Y, so they can have quite independent measurements. 8.111, and apply that, and now you'll see that this model's added it to the surface of the current images or the current model that we have. So I'm just going to move this now to the end where we want it. So just zoom in on the 2D view, use the Alt button and drag it to the end that I want. That'll be fine, and that's where I want this item to be. And now I'm just going to merge that in. So go to the model section, and I want to select the item, the end tabs themselves, and now I'm going to use double click on here and merge that in, so you can see now it's the right height. I'm also going to select the item and change the overall height of that item too. So I need that to merge into that other one at roughly the same sort of height. That'll do fine. Just close that down. And I can also drag these components just to fit in onto the ends. It's not so critical on the ends, it's just across the width. It must fit exactly. Now select the end tab, and we need to do the mirror mode, and we want to mirror left to right. So now we have, in the one level, we have only one item drawn, but it's mirrored to the other side. Okay, now we can have a quick look at this model wrapped. We're just going to toggle it so we can see it wrapped. And so we have our barley corn wrap. It is still possible to use the material setup and change the thickness with the slider of the core. You can change the diameter of the material if you have some bigger stock material that you want to use, and also you can use this slider here to drag the model up or down within that area. I'm going to make it a little more complex now. I'm going to add a new level here, and we're going to taper the inner section of this barley twist. So insert new level, and we're going to call this the taper. And on the taper level I want to add a bit of clip art. So clip art section again, the same piece of clip art again into the center, and now we're just going to rotate that. So we'll unwrap first of all so we can see a little bit more clearly, and go to the modeling section. I want to use the rotate option. I want to rotate that 90 degrees and apply. So now it's in the correct orientation. I'm now going to resize this now to fit into this area here. Now I know between the end stops is an area where the barley twist exists, is between 18 inches and the width of it is 8.0111. So we're just going to resize this now in here. So I've unlinked again these two, and it's 18 inches across, and it's also 8.0111 inches wide. So now we're going to add this to this section. Okay, so we can see where that's lying now in the model. I'm just going to wrap that as well, so toggle the wrapped view. We can see that actually working. And now I want to just deal with these ends here. So that's just about positioning really. So if we go back into the modeling section, it's the same with both ends. So go back into the modeling section here. And I want to just change the order of where this is. So I'm going to slide this now down and under the end tabs. So you can see now it merges in quite nicely. I'm going to just turn off now the barley twist tab itself so I can see what's going on underneath. And I just want to deal with the extra taper tab that we've just added. So select it, and I want to reverse it now. So I'm going to go into the actual item itself, and I want to change this measurement here to -0.6. So you can see what's happened here now, and that should be okay. just unwrap those, just toggle that again so we can see it unwrapped, and you can see exactly what's happening now. So that's made a negative form for us to wrap our barley twist on. I'm just going to change the height of that now so it sort of fits in on the edges nicely. And then we can just switch back on the barley twist layer or level so you can see how that interacts with that first surface. And then we can toggle that view into the wrapped view again. So now you can see how we've got a tapered barley twist, which is really quite a complex shape to have and sitting with inside the stock material that we have. Again, on this layer too, you can change the form of the taper, so you can have it thinner or thicker, higher or lower, and that will change how the barley twist layer interacts with the taper layer too. So you can have this, if we sort of focus in now on this end, you can see I can make the underlying taper higher or lower to get the maximum amount of area for the barley twist. So within the stock material we're making the most of the pattern that we want to machine. I'm just taking those right up to the edges. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is to add some floral decoration to this. I'll just toggle that flat, and now we're going to add a new piece of clip art. So go to the clip art section, and this time I'm going to select some floral decoration. So clip art, I need to go to plants and fruit, and we'll go to this floral flourish here. Double click and it ends up in the center of the model. Okay, if we go to the modeling section now, it's ended up inside the taper, so I'm going to add a new level, and I'm going to call this level floral. And I'm just going to drag the flower flourish into the floral level. And I'm just going to position this now. If I click on the 3D view and click on the Z option in the 3D view, so the Z view, so that gives me a plan view of where the item is, click it and drag it to where I want it to be. Again, what I'm going to do now is just change the orientation of this so it's more pleasing and fits in with the rest of the design. And this is up to you really, how you feel that should look. Well, I think that's okay, that's pretty much where I want it to be. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is to merge this into the surface now, so it'll sit just underneath those barley twists that we already have. So if I click onto the floral design at the top and say merge in the combine mode, and now it just disappeared. You can just about see it underneath. So in the 2D view, click it, and now we're going to change the height. So we're going to double click on here, and I want the height to send it through the material so I can see it a little bit more clearly. So I'm going to make the height about 0.83, something like this. So now you can see the shape again, and to get more detail on the top surface I want to change the surface itself. So I'm going to change that to about 0.35 of an inch, just to give me a little bit more form on the top surface. So now I've got some more detail, and now I need to fade it in because it's still flat and it's sticking up rather a lot now as the tapers down to the center. So I'm going to use the fade tool. I'm going to set from this end to this end, and you'll see it's done 50% so far. So just click under here again and reduce that until the flower and the leaves are just above the surface that we've already wrapped. 30% is fine for that one. Okay, again I'm going to now look at the top surface. That's okay, and we can't use the automated mirroring tool this time, so if I just rewrap that you can see how that's going to look. Just before I do the mirror to mirror it down to the bottom, you'll see I don't want it showing too high here on this surface because it will affect when I come to machine it, because it will make the adjustments for me. So I'm going to just slightly move that into the surface until it's level. So it's just level with the other items that we have. I'm just going to type in there about 0.7, and that should be 0.75. I think that should be about right. So it's just level with that top surface now. I'll just toggle the switch again so we can see it unwrapped. That looks okay. Nice pleasing shape. So I'll just toggle to unwrap it, and now I'm going to use the mirror option, and I'm using the mirror option here. I can't use the automatic mirror option because we need to have them in different directions, so I'm going to use the manual way of mirroring. I'll just go on to the select the item, drawing. I want the mirror option from the transform objects. I want to copy one of these to the other side, and I want to mirror horizontal, and then I want to turn off the copy and mirror it vertically so it's in the opposite direction. Okay, and then if I just look from the top view again, the plan view with the Z, so I can see that they're pretty much in line, which is really where I want them to be. So when they're wrapped, they'll be on the same side, so we can see them visually. Okay, close that down. We'll just toggle to a rewrap, and that's pretty much all done. We're really ready for the machining section now. Just before we go to machining, I'll just look at the 3D view, and I want to look at the material setup now just to make sure that everything is correct. And you can see here we've got a little bit of an error going on, so I just need to make sure that that is going to fit in within the stock. So I'm going to change this here. The new height is just a little bit over with the, since we put the floral decoration on, so I'm just going to reset the height to 1.255, which is the maximum across the radius, and everything now should just fit with inside the stock material that we have. Okay, we're ready to start machining. Just before we start machining, we need to make sure that this model is going to fit within the stock material that we have, and also how we're going to machine it. So we don't need to machine the two end caps, so I'm going to draw a vector that isolates just the section that I want in the center. So if we toggle back to the two views, and in the 2D view I'm going to go to modeling, and I need to go to the drawing. I need to use the vector tools, and I want to draw a rectangle from the center here, and I want it to be 18 inches long. In fact, I'm going to go a little bit further because I need to go into the tabs area as well, to the end tabs. So I want it 22 by 80111 wide. Actually, I think 21 would be better. So let's go for the 21 inches lengthwise. So we'll say OK to that, and that should be OK. Now before we start, we need to go into the gadgets area again now, because the material stock that we've started with is going to be a square block, and I want to take those edges off the most efficient way. So inside here there's a thing called create rounding toolpath. So we start with a square block, and that's going to be, if I just average a little bit bigger than the one I've got, which is 2.6, 2.5 I have, 2.6, I want it to be an optimized raster on the edges, and I want to select the tool that I'm going to use now. So this is quite a large tool, so 3/8 end mill I'm going to use for this one, and I want it to be fairly brisk. Again, you need to check your own setup for your own machine about the speeds and feeds that you're going to use, most appropriate ones for your machine. And let's say OK for that. Now bearing in mind this toolpath is going to use the full area and is going to clean the whole stock that you have, so it's best to leave a little bit extra on both ends of this material to make sure that it doesn't collide with the tailstock or the chuck that you have. Okay, so the first toolpath's done to round those edges off. The next one I'm going to do a roughing pass with inside the vector that I've just selected. So I'm going to select the vector, I'm going to select the tool that I need for this, which is going to be the same tool again, 3/8 end mill, and I want to use selected vector, which is the one here. I want to leave a little bit of an allowance on, say 0.04 onto that surface, leave a little bit more if you want to, and I'm going to do Z level roughing. That looks all okay to me. So let's create the toolpaths. So now you can see I've done the toolpaths for this section too, and we can have a quick look at those in the simulation. That's the first roughing pass. That should be good. Next I want to use a finishing pass. So I'm going to just close this one down. I'm going to use the same vector, but I want to use a different tool this time. So I'm going to use a finishing pass. I'm going to select tapered ball nose this time. Can be just an ordinary ball nose. I just have some tapered ball nose, but you can use an ordinary ball nose if you want to. And everything seems to be okay. Just say okay to that one. And I want to calculate. I'm using a raster strategy here. Calculate. I'm using a 3mm tapered ball nose, but you could use just an ordinary 3mm ball nose. Okay, the toolpath's finished. I just want to have a look at that now in the simulation, just to make sure everything's okay. Okay, that's a nice finish. Just going to check around here now to make sure everything's in order. So we'll just toggle the flat view, have a quick look. And what I'd like to do next is just to isolate the two floral sections, both ends. And I want to just machine those with a finer tool again, just to pick some of the detail up. So we'll toggle that back to the wrapped view, make sure that that finish is okay. And now I'm going to look on the 2D view and just select the two floral sections. So we're going to click this one and shift and select this one, and we're going to use the modeling tools, and I want to use the modeling tools, and I want to create boundary. So now it's got a little vector around the outside of both of those, in which I can control the toolpath to just machine inside those areas. So I'm going to add a new tool in here. I'll just go to the finishing section, select a tool. Okay, in this section we do have a tapered tool that I'm going to use, but I want to use a finer one. And you can see here that the pass depth is actually missing if I enter it through the machine toolpath section. So to enter this a new tool, it's best to go to the toolpath at the top here and tool database. And when you go to tool database and add this, we do then get a pass depth. Really quite important to add it through this section, especially for tapered tools. Okay, so I'm going to copy this one and then change a few of the details in here for the finder tool. So I've got a 1/16 tool, so I'll just add the different information here. 0.6 inches for this one, and again I'm just adding the details that are relevant to the machine that we have here, so you should make sure that any information that you're entering into the toolpath descriptions are suitable for your own machine tool. So I'll just finish these details off. Pass depth, I'm going to add around about 0.6 I suppose for this, and just alter a few more bits and pieces. So then I'll have a nice finer tool, 1/16 tool, to pick up all the very fine detail in the floral leaf patterns. Again, you can use a 1/16 straight-ended, straight-sided tool if you wanted to. Just be careful of the speeds and feeds with that though. So if we select apply and say OK, I'm now going to select the tool from the for the finishing tool. Just select from the database, and we're going to say no offset for this one. A raster. That's all fine. Just calculate that now. Inside here I'm going to put 1/16 just to make sure we know which tool referring to. Tapered tool. And okay, so there's my finishing toolpath too. And just on those edges, so we can see them, it's picking out the very fine detail of those flowers. You may not need to do that, but if there's some delicate parts in there that you'd like to show up, then it's nice to have to go over this section with just a very fine tool. Okay, we've pretty much finished most of the toolpaths now for the rotary section, except for the parting off, for cutting off the two ends now. I want to leave a little bit more of the stock at the bottom to fit into the bottom platform, and a little bit less at the top to fit into the tabletop sections. So we're going to draw those lines on here now. So if we go down to the drawing tools, I'm going to pick the line tool, create the line tool, and I want to start using some measurements now from the center and from the base. So we need to come in on the X at around about 10 inches, so -10 on this side and -4, and that's where I want the line to start, and I'm going to add that line in here. So that's going to be for the bottom section of the leg, of this central stem rather. And I'm also going to add another line in while I'm here at 9.5, so 9.5 and 4, and start drawing a line here. Make that control to the bottom. Okay, so the two lines, the smaller area will be for the top tabletop, and the bottom area will be for the base. Okay, of these two sections now, I'm going to pick both lines, and we're going to add a parting off tool. So this will be a profile tool path. I'll select both sections now, so both of these vectors, top and bottom, and we'll add a end mill. It's going to cut on the outside, and if I go to edit the tool that I've just selected, and I just want to make sure, check the parameters are all okay, they seem in order, so I'll just say OK to this tool. Again, you need to check those that are relevant for your own machine. So OK to that. And just before I start, I'll just check out the cut depth. We don't really want to cut through this and part off completely, otherwise there'll be nothing to support the model while it's cutting. So I think we'll go down about 0.8, and this should leave a little core straight through the middle of the model, so we can take it out of the machine and then saw these last bits off afterwards. It'll just hold it all in place. It's now telling me that it's warning me that these are open vectors, but that's absolutely fine. We'll just say OK to that. And I'm just going to check which side of the line it's cutting there. So it's cutting on the inside of these lines, and I really want it to cut on the outside. So I'm just going to go back, double click on here, go back, and I'm going to change that now to inside and calculate again. And you'll see now the toolpaths have moved to the waist area, which is where I want them to be. And we'll just simulate those and see what they look like. Okay, so now you can see the core in the middle that's going to leave it on the machine and keep it in place. Okay, I'm just going to rename some of these toolpaths now so we can keep them all together. I'll just unwrap this one first of all so you can see how deep that is going to go. I'll just toggle that to a flat option, just turn it to the side. You can see how deep that's going to go now. So we should leave a little core through the middle that will just hold it onto the machine. And rewrap that one. Okay, we're ready to start machining. I'm just going to reorganize now the toolpaths and rename them so we can save some time in cutting. So we could probably append some of these toolpaths together. So I'm going to rename this one to 3/8. The roughing pass also uses the same tool, so just rename that one. That's a 3/8 as well. So 3/8 slot drill. And when we come to start saving these, then we can see quite clearly how we can group them together, save a little bit of machining time. Make that as a slot drill too. The finishing pass was a 1/8 taper. Well, 1/16, that's fine. And I'll just sort the profile out, which is a 1/4. Rename this one to tapered as well, so we realise it's a tapered toolpath. And the profile was a 1/4 inch. So rename that to a 1/4. Okay, all toolpaths are ready to be saved. These two can be saved together in that order as well, so the rounding toolpath and the roughing toolpath. And all the other three will be individual toolpaths. That completes the rotary toolpaths, and now we'll move on to the next section, which is the base. And we're going to create a new file, and this time it's going to be 12 inches square, and we want it single-sided, and say OK. So this is going to be the base now. I'm going to use some other clip art models for this section, some things that you've already got inside your free files, free clip art files. So I'm going to select this from decorative first of all, and we're going to resize it now too. So I want to size this to around about 9.4 for the base. Link the sizes together so it stays in proportion. And I'm also going to add another one now into here. So modeling, clip art, and then I want to go to domes. So dome section, this middle dome here, dishes and domes. Bring that one in. I'm going to resize that one too to 9.4 and say OK. Make sure they're linked too. And now I'm going to order them, put them in the correct order. So if we go back to the modeling option, I've selected the dome, and I want the dome to go to a particular height. I want that to be 0.84. Close that one. And the decorative circle, I'll move that above the dome there so it sits on top. And I want to change them to adds rather than merges, so you can see it sitting on top in the layer. And then double click on this section here, which is the decorative dome, and I'm going to resize that to 5.3 so we get a little bit more depth of field in this section too. Okay, so that's pretty much ready. So I just need to check out the overall height now of this model. So if we go to the modeling section and 3D modeling tools, in the top section here there's scale model height. That'll just give us an overall figure of how tall the model is. At the moment it's 1.13, and that'll be okay. The next thing I need to do is to draw a vector in the centre as a pocket, and this is for the Barley twist stem that we've just made, the rotary axis option. And just make sure that the diameter of that is 2.55 inches in this particular case, and the diameter of the particular one that you are making. Also, we're going to draw a vector at 9.4, which is the outside diameter of the models that we just imported. So now we have two vectors, an internal pocket and an external profile vector that we're going to use for the profile cut. Just to reiterate on this part as well, is that the centre pocket must be the same diameter as the barley stem that you're making. Okay, we're going to open the toolpaths now. Just pin that open and we'll just have a look at the models, both models, the 3D model and the 2D image too. The first option is to create a roughing toolpath between the two vectors. So I'm going to select fairly large slot drill for this, just so we can clear the area fairly quickly. I'm going to go between the two vectors, the outer and the inner, and select the tool. We're going to use a 3/8 slot drill, fairly large slot drill for this one, just to clear the area quite quickly. Machine the selected vectors. I want to leave a little allowance of 0.04 and Z level roughing. I'll just jot in here the size of the tool. You can either do this now or at the end. It's up to you. So I'm just going to put 3/8 slot drill in here and calculate. So that's my first toolpath. We'll just see how that looks in the simulation. That's cleared out a lot of the material straight away, and you can see we haven't wasted time on the center, so we're just going to select that now and make a pocket for that one. We're going to use the same tool for this as well. Cut depth at 0.87, so it's not going to go all the way through, just a little bit deeper. To take the stem or the center rotary axis option, and I'm going to jot in here as well that this is the center, and using a slot drill 3/8 and 0.87 deep. Okay, so I'm going to now just run that through in the simulation so you can see what that looks like too. And then I'm going to do the outside profile. So we'll select the vector for the outside, and I want to use the same tool for this one too. So it's going to be a profile cut on the outside. I want to go down Z, which is the full depth from the top to the bottom, and plus 0.019. Just so it goes through, sorry, 0.19. So it just goes through the model, through the material that we have. And I want to add the correct tool, so we're going to go for the same tool again. So this is going to be 3/8 slot drill. And we need to add some toolpath tabs too to this at 0.47 and 0.31 thickness. I'm just going to add in here the tool, what we're doing here, so it's going to be another 3/8. So I'm just adding this detail here. Again, you could edit these afterwards, you don't have to do it now. It's warning me it's going to cut through, that's absolutely fine. I just want to check where the tabs are, that's good too. And then we can simulate this one as well. So we have our tabs in place, and it's fully machined. Okay, we're just going to do the finishing pass now, which is on the top surface, again between the two vectors. So we'll select the two vectors, the inner and the outer. So the pocket vector and the profile vector, and we're going to use a finishing toolpath for this one. I'll select the tool, so I'm going to use a ball nose on this one. So we're going to use a tapered ball nose, a 1/8 taper. Everything else is fine. I'm going to use boundary offset at 0.04, just so it goes over the edges, and just jot in here the tool that it is, so a 1/8 ball nose, and calculate. So now we've just calculated the areas to give us the finished toolpath on the top surface, and we'll just simulate that one as well. That looks good. And that's all finished now, ready to take the central barley twist stem for the base. That concludes the preparation for the base of the table. We're going to save these files out now, then move on to the last part of this, which is the tabletop itself. All these files being saved are for the free download files for the barley twist table, and you can access these through your V&Co account. So we'll close this section down and open up a new one and start on the tabletop. So File, New, and Open. So we're going to say the same sort of size again, 12 by 12. I want a different thickness this time, say 0.78 or something like that of an inch. On a machine from the bed, and this has to be a double-sided option because we're going to cut a pocket in the back of this table too, and we're going to be able to flip it. So say OK to that, machining from the bed, everything is OK. So now first of all we're going to draw a vector for the centre. So I'm going to say a circle. I'm going to put in a little bit smaller for the top table, so the base of the table is a little bit heavier. So 7.87 for the top. I'm going to offset that inwards, make another one for at 7 inches, something like this. And then I'm going to draw a little rectangle, just so I can put a small edge, domed edge on the side. So I want it 0.43 and 0.75 high, and click that around about here, I suppose. I'm just going to move that and just move it up to this section here. I want to put a little radius now, or a fillet on this one edge. So I'm going to use the filleting tool. So I use the filleting tool, and on this edge here I'm going to make a fillet of 0.43. Just click on the edge. And I want to make a very small fillet on the opposite side too, so something like 0.1 here, 0.01 actually, on this edge here. I'm going to use this now for a moulding toolpath around the edge. I'm just going to remove the bottom section, so click on here and remove, delete the span. And now I'm ready to start preparing the toolpath for this section too. Before we do that, I need to put some alignment holes in here, so some dowels that we're going to drill into the surface. I'm going to use a quarter inch drill for this, and I'm just going to dot them onto the surface here, and we use the same on both sides. So once I've drawn them, I'll flip them onto the other side. So position them so they're off center a little way. Close that section. Then I'm going to select them all and then copy them to the other side too. So right mouse click and copy to the other side. So they're now on both sides of this model. This is just for alignment purposes when we come to flip the model. The first thing I'm going to do is to prepare some drilling tool paths for this. So I'm going to pin the tool paths section open. And we're going to select the drilling operations. So all 3 holes are selected, and now I'm going to do some peck drilling in here. So we'll select the drilling option at the top here, and I want to come down by about 0.6 into the surface. I want to retract gap to be about 0.7. So I want it to lift up each time it's going to go into the hole. And I'm going to edit the tool that I'm going to use, and I want that to be around about the same as well. So around about 0.7 I would think for this too. Now you can just use an ordinary drill for this. I'm just using a ball nose tool, but you could enter some drilling tools in this operation and just use a drill itself. Okay, so 0.78, I'm happy with that. Say OK to that and calculate. So the drilling toolpath is ready. Let's just go to drill to the surface, just so I can put some dowels in the holes of these, just to align the front and back surfaces. As the tabletop is quite thin, I don't want to cut too deep in this section, so I'm going to now cut the pocket in here. I want to bring that down by about 0.3, and I'm going to use a 3/8 tool for this. And I want to cut about 70% step over, so it's a fairly big cut, and I'm not going to come down too far. That should be okay. Just simulate that. I'll simulate the drill holes too to make sure they're going to be in the right place. Next I'm going to prepare the profile for the outside vector. So we're going to select the outside vector now. I'm going to use a 3/8 slot drill again. Select the outside vector. I'm going to come down at start height at 0.157 and a depth of cut at 0.63. I'm going to use some tabs, so I'm going to add tabs to the toolpath here at 0.47 and 0.31 wide, or sorry, thickness rather, and calculate. And the warning per se it's going to cut through, that's absolutely fine. But one thing I forgot to do was to do the tabs, so let's switch those on and put 6 tabs on there. and just recalculate. So now you should see it'll simulate a little bit of the way through, and you'll see the tabs are there to support the model when I flip it over. Okay, that's absolutely fine. So the front's done, except I'm going to do a moulding toolpath now for the edge, for the outside edge. So I'm happy with that, the way it looks at the moment. I've got a nice little edge there for the table. And now I'm going to add the moulding toolpath detail to the edge of that tabletop. So first of all, I need to select the moulding toolpath icon, which is on the right hand side. And I'm going to select the vector, the internal vector for the circle. This one here, and the shape that I want it to use. And I'm going to use a ball nose tool for this operation, but this time it's going to be a 1/4 inch ball nose tool that I'm going to use. I'm going to vary the step over. It's going to be a swept profile. I'm going to offset the boundary by 0.06 and calculate. Okay, so now I've got a nice edge on that surface, and it's going to vary the step over as it goes around the edges. So I'm just going to simulate that section, and now we can see all the top part is ready now, and all I have to do is to finish the back file. We now need to flip the model to the other side, so just use the icon at the top of the screen to flip to the opposite side. And on this side I'm now going to draw a circular vector for a pocket to take the barley twist. So this must match the diameter of the barley twist again, so we know that is 2.55, and I want to get that from the center here, and that's my vector for the small pocket that I'm going to add to the back. Again, this doesn't have to be too deep because it's only a very small section that we have on top of the finished barley twist. So now I'm going to reselect the dowel holes. These are the location holes for the opposite side, and I'm going to peck drill those too, just using the same again as I did on the other side. I'm going to go 0.6 deep. It's going to be a 1/4 inch ball nose. It could be just a drill, that's okay. I'm going to retract out of the holes each time by the same amount, and the depth, the pass depth is okay too, so at 0.7, that's fine. And calculate that one. So that puts the holes in here, and we'll just simulate those just to see what they look like. That's good. Right, next I'm going to put the little pocket in the center of here. So we'll just check over the side, make sure it's all in line. And I'm going to make the pocket section here. So in this one, we'll go to pocket. I want to cut into that surface by around about 0.3. And the tool I'm going to use is the 3/8 again, that's fine. Apply milling, offset, excellent, that's okay, and we'll calculate that one too. So you can just see I'm just making a small pocket in the center of here, and then we'll simulate that, see what that looks like too. So the finished model has a little pocket in the back for the barley twist to sit inside, and a little cutout at the top of the table with a little rim on the edge. So that one's finished too. Just before we finish, this is the section that I'd like to machine first. So this back section, the one we've just done, because it's only got one little pocket in, it'll be easier to do that first. So if we're going to flip the machine over, we'll just use this button here to toggle it to the front side. And now I'm going to make the peck drill holes deeper on this side, so they go into the spoils board. So we just double click, open that up. I want it to go all the way through the first part of the board, so that's T to the total depth, and then cut in at 0.6, so it's going to cut over, it says, and into the spoil board. That's absolutely fine. because that's where I want it to be for location purposes. So if I turn to the side here, you can see, if I turn it to the edge of the model, you can see that these pectorals now will go all the way through and into the spoil board for alignment purposes. That concludes the tutorial for the Barley twist table. And just to reiterate the information regarding this last and final part of the process with the tabletop only, is that we're going to machine the back first of this one. We're going to machine the pocket so that the Barley twist stem fits snugly into the pocket at the back of the tabletop head. Use the drill holes on the back to align the dowels. On the front, use the pectoral option to drill the spoil board and align the stock material for the final finish on the front. We'll save these files, all are available for the download. Hope you enjoyed the video. So let's now go to the workshop and see how it all turned out, machining and assembly.
hope you enjoyed the video. If you want to make this for yourself, head over to your VCarve account and download the free files. If you like the video, give us a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. See you next time.